Hello and good evening. I'm Manish Anand. In the special episode of the Raisina Hills, we have with us an eminent historian, Mr. Vikram Sampath. We are going to have a short discussion on his book on Gyanvapi, Waiting for Shiva, Unearthing the Truth of Gyanvapi. This book has been translated into Hindi and it is also being translated into several more languages, including Marathi and other languages. Mr. Sampath, a very warm welcome to the Raisina Hills show.
Thank you, Manishi. Good evening.
Thank you, sir. To begin with, Mr. Sampath, we would like to know that you have mentioned that the Western historians carried several of the biases in dealing with the India's ancient history. So, how do you deal with those aspects in your book?
We've had a colonial bias against the way Indian history was always written, right from James Mill, who wrote the history of India during the British times. It clearly, looked down upon Indian culture, looked down upon India's past, and the whole Macaulay, idea of how we need to create a bunch of interpreters who were completely disconnected from their roots. They were only Indian in their blood and skin color, but they were English in their tastes, opinions, morals, and intellect. And I think that continued through the colonial period. What is, worse is post-independence. We should have corrected this after India became independent. But then we continued those biases and made it even worse with ideological tilt of what is a Marxist historiography, where it was a unilateral, single, monochromatic, linear version of Indian history, where only we are made to look down upon our past, look back at our past with a sense of guilt, being apologetic about it, looking only at the negative aspects of it, and talking about, we were not a nation at all, we were all desperate, elements, and it was the British who came and gave us a sense of nationhood. Even in this, current season, we are seeing some eminent people, so-called people, talking about how India is full of Africans and Arabs and all kinds of Chinese and white people. So there's nothing native to India. Everything is come from outside, right? From our earliest, ancestors, the Aryans, the Aryan invasion, which was created, the myth of it, that your earliest, your Vedic literature, Sanskrit, everything came from outside. So it's our destiny to be ruled by people from the outside. There is nothing native here. Outsiders came and gave us education, culture, this and that. And so that a lot of educated Indians also believe in these type of things, that, we were not a country, we were a nation of losers. Our history only talks of, the battles we lost, series of wars we have lost. Now, if we are the only pre-Bronze Age era civilization that is still surviving, there must have been some wars that our poor ancestors won also. Where are those wars and heroes and heroines of our history? So not only in this book, but in my earlier works too, before this I'd written a book called Brave Hearts of Bharat, on the unsung heroes and heroines of wars which we won as Indians, where also, the other lopsided view of Indian history is it is very, very Delhi centric. Large parts of India don't feature in this history of India which we study. Small dynasties in Delhi, some Lodi, Khilji, this and that, who did not contribute much to the country. We study so much about them in detail, but South India or Northeast India, the Cholas, the Ahoms, the Marathas, Shatavahanas and Kadambas, Rashtrakutas, all these, dynasties and their achievements, we don't go into the details of all of that. So in that book too, I had addressed that by making it a pan-Indian. So 15, brave hearts I had chosen in that book, out of which 8 were men and 7 were women. Chosen from different corners of India, right? From Kashmir to Assam to Kerala to Gujarat and the whole of India covered. And in this book, Waiting for Shiva, Unearthing the Truth of Kashi's Gyanvapi, while we talk about, the waves of destruction, right from Kutubuddin Aibak, who destroyed Kashi, to the Sharki Nawabs, Razia Sultan, the Jaunpur Sharki Nawabs, and Alauddin Khilji, Sikandar Lodi, and finally Aurangzeb, who destroys the Vishwanath temple. Parallelly, there is also a stream of resilience, the pushback that we gave as a civilization. Now, every time they broke a temple, in its close vicinity a new temple would come up, and the Brahmins of Maharashtra and Karnataka, they migrate to Kashi, and they start an intellectual renaissance, a revival of Kashi's consciousness in the country's mind. So all these stories are very, very inspiring. And these are all based on facts. These are not made up stories just to make us feel good about ourselves, but these should be based on facts and documents. That okay, on the one hand, these attacks were happening, but we also gave a pushback to all of that. So even when Muhammad Ghazni came and attacked, Somnath, we are told about the attack on Somnath, but we are seldom told that there were 50,000 common Hindus who were defending Somnath temple, and these were not the soldiers of the Chalukyan king who ruled in Gujarat, but they were common Hindus of all castes, and they were with their primitive weapons and whatever they had. They defended their Bhagwan for 3 days, and it took Muhammad Ghazni 3 days to kill all of them and then enter the mandir. He thought it's an easy pass to get inside. So these tales of valor, of resilience, that in the end someone loses, someone wins. That is part of life. But did we lose so easily, or did we put a valiant fight? What were those stories of inspiration, of resilience? I think that is what finds resonance even in this book, that the Hindus of India never gave up on Kashi. And the dispute we have in Gyanvapi today is not something that has come today due to some politics and all of that. Politics may be there in everything, but then the dispute itself has a long history, and shrines fell, shrines rose, but the Hindus of India never gave up on Kashi Vishwanath, on Ayodhya, on Mathura, on Prayag, Gaya, all these important pilgrim sites, particularly of northern India, which faced the maximum brunt of Western invasions.
No, we are basically portrayed as people who are inward looking. We are more of a reflective nature as per descriptions given about the Indians. And do you think that in some ways became reason that we did not discover our own past of the ancient glory that the Cholas went across the seas and spread the civilization in the East Asia, and they went in fact far up to Japan also, probably. So what happened? Why were we not able to focus on our history and bring out the facts, and why do we have to live with the saying that it was the British which told us about Chandragupta Maurya, about the Ashoka, and so on?
No, I mean a lot of these kings and so on of the past. It was a British archaeologists who discovered them and repackaged them and told us. I think over generations there was a sense of historical amnesia. I think through the destruction of knowledge systems, the manner in which our universities were all destroyed, Nalanda, Takshashila, Vikramshila, all these important centers of learning were destroyed. Important sources of knowledge and knowledge production was destroyed. Maybe through that, generation after generation, the amnesia started setting in about our own past, and we started forgetting many of this. And it was later, you're right, that 19th, 20th century archaeologists, we owe a lot of the discovery of our own past to them, which is sad. But they presented that picture also with so much of colored, blinkers. Like we have this famous example that Ashoka, after the Kalinga War, he was so full of remorse, and that is when he converted to Buddhism. And before that, he was called Chanda Ashoka and all that. But then the actual inscription, epigraphic evidence shows that 2-3 years even before the Kalinga War, he had already converted to Buddhism. That is not told to us. So a lot of coloring has been done both by colonial historians and worse after independence by the Nehruvian Marxist confluence of history writing. And I think George Orwell had said, he who controls the past controls the present and the future. So our colonial invaders, they understood this. So to control people's minds, you had to control history. History is so fundamental to our sense of identity, our sense of self-worth, pride, where we came from, what is it that our civilization is all about. So they understood that to cut off the spine of this civilization, you had to erase history from us. And so today we see this revival of interest in history, a lot of decolonial literature that is happening in history. That is all a manifestation of this, that we want to go back to where we had been ruptured from our past, or presented a very distorted version of our own past.
Indeed, but history to us is all through the NCRT books, and somehow the NCRT books are, again, as you have said earlier, Delhi focused. And in fact, the lament even in the current days is that our news commentaries are also Delhi focused. So
Yeah.
Pakistan gets more attention than China. In fact, in that ways.
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
how do we get? How do we free ourselves from the bondage of the NCRT books? How do we mainstream the history education to the population?
That's a very good question. I'm cognizant of the fact that sadly, in almost 10 years, nothing has been done to change the history books. We've had HRD ministers who said not a word of history has been changed. It's a matter of shame and not something to be proud of. But governments have their way. I think it takes its own time to do what it needs to do. I think instead of complaining, one should begin acting. So that is why one very small step, which I have also taken, and I'm happy to share to you and through you to the viewers of this podcast. I've started a new organization called the Foundation for Indian Historical and Cultural Research, FIHCR. It's a totally non-governmental, apolitical, independent body which is, trying to do primary source based original research on the history of India across various geographies. We want to look for new scholars. There'll be fellowships that will be given to people across the country to write books, based on original source material. We also plan to have projects, incubated in various educational institutions, which will look at historical themes with a contemporary relevance. And then more books need to come out, more journals, and all these has to come out. Now, the hard work is to do the research, to bring out the material like this book also. Now, after it has come out like this, today is an information age, and the young generation, what all has been done, the research has been done, it can be disseminated through multiple mediums. You have no dearth of platforms today, podcasts like this which will reach out, which can mainstream history, Instagram reels. So whatever content is there, through Instagram, through Twitter, through Facebook, all these social media platforms, small reels. Now OTT platforms have started coming, and I hope more and more historical themes based on research is adapted to films and OTT series. Till now, Bollywood particularly has just been having a very fantastic and a distorted version of Indian history, which they showed, whether it was all this Baji Rao and Padmavati and all these things. But we need to have research based historians also being part of the entire process, and only then I think the process can. Huh.
So basically, so I would like to know from you that history is often stated to be very subjective, and it is subject to interpretation of the authors and the professors and the researchers.
Yeah.
So invariably, the labels also come quite freely.
Hmm.
So how do you ensure the authenticity, that the labels and descriptions don't affect your research works?
Yeah, no, that's excellent, because yeah, and particularly to disparage somebody and their work and so on. Particularly these days, everything is binary. You're either with us or against us, and so history also very easily you can put labels. This is some Sanghi historian. This is this and that and so on. So, but these kind of things don't bother me at all. I think history, the Sanskrit word for that is itihasa. It thus happened. That is a translation. You have to be as impartial. A historian is not a judge, jury, or prosecutioner. He or she is just somebody who illuminates the archives, whatever is in the archives, whatever is hidden. He or she is bringing that out to the general public. So your judgments, your good and bad, those things should be as minimum as possible. There is a certain subjectivity and interpretation of those things that come out, and that is the beauty of history thereby. Because if everything that is about the past is already known and it is present, somewhere in some cupboard, then there is nothing for historians to research. So that is where the subjectivity comes, how I look at a particular source of evidence, how someone else looks. So the idea in history is the discipline should allow multiplicity of views. No one view is the final view. Neti, neti, as in the Indian tradition, na iti, na iti. This is not the final word. So I have done some research, you have done some research on the same subject, someone else has done. A collective of all of this is the final truth. And so historians should be humble enough to understand that you don't know everything about everything. There are elements which you may not have access, some sources you may not have known. It is so many years in the past. So some things could have been lost. Something goes away from memory, goes away from the collection. And so that is why multiple viewpoints of history should be encouraged, which unfortunately, like we discussed in India, there was a hegemony of only one narrative of history. And so there needs to be an alternative version, there needs to be parallel versions, and then only a discerning reader can make out that, okay, some of the parts is the truth.
I would like to ask you a very specific question that there are a lot of interest in religion nowadays, and since the Ram Janam Bhoomi movement, and with the involvement of the Supreme Court and the court-ordered archaeological survey of India findings, apparently gave a new direction to the historical interpretation of our very very ancient past, which we understand as mythology.
Yeah.
So, in the matters of religion, archaeology is one tool to find out what we wish to argue for. But how do we address the bigger issues? Because religion is going to be, people say it would be a controversial things, because history is very painful for us, for India, because of several years of invasion and several years of slavery. So in that context, how should historian address the religious conflicts within the society?
So I think what we have done, particularly after independence, is to deny that certain atrocities happened, because we think by not talking about it, we will somehow put it under the carpet and they will vanish. And over a few generations, people will forget. But today also, I mean, if you go to Hampi, if you go to Konark, if you go to the Martand Sun Temple in Kashmir, Srinagar, you see the Khandahars, you see the ruins of old temples. In Kashi, when you go to enter the Vishwanath Mandir, even now, the first thing that comes is that Gyan Vapi mosque. First of all, the word Gyan Vapi and a mosque, it's a Sanskrit name for a mosque, which is a oxymoron. The western wall ruins are all of a 16th century temple that Narayan Bhatt constructed with Raja Todarmal's help during Akbar's time. So, you see these things, then how do you explain? You take your children to these places, they will ask you questions saying who destroyed this, but your history book will say, oh, everything was Ganga Jamuni Tehzeeb, everybody was living in peace and harmony, and all these kind of I think the best antidote or the best prescription for social harmony is you tell the truth as it is. Like I said earlier, itihasa, if it does happen, you should tell the truth as it is. Now the communities of today, so young Muslim man or woman today is not responsible for what Aurangzeb and Ghazni, Ghori, Tipu Sultan, all these people did. We should make that different distinction too. But at the same time, communities of today should not valorize these people. They were barbarians. They are not your heroes. So your ancestors suffered as much, under these atrocities and invaders. So people going to the mazar of Aurangzeb or going and, valorizing Tipu Sultan and all these people, that also should stop. So history should act as the antidote, as where you get to know the truth. So we always talk about the truth and reconciliation. Talk about the truth, reconcile the differences that are there, the conflicts that you spoke about, and don't whitewash crimes. Don't deny them, because denialism will never help you to move forward. Make peace with the past. We've had a very troubled past. Will Durant called the Islamic conquest of India as one of the bloodiest tales of human history, not just Indian history. So those facts need to be talked about. How many thousands and thousands and lakhs, maybe temples that got destroyed, or places of learning that got destroyed, slave trade, sex slaves that our women were subjected to. All these things need to be spoken about. Nobody today is responsible, and today's communities should not hyphenate themselves with these invaders. We should move forward. I think that is the solution that history learning and history dissemination should give to people, if we need to move forward to a new India where we are not living in the past or denying the past.
Since you mentioned, Mr. Sampath, about sex slavery, I would just take your views on the revival of sex slavery, which was abolished by the agreement by the Russian and the British India in the 19th century. But that has been revived by the Islamic State in the contexts of Yazidi community in Iraq and Syria. So, but do you think that history as it is should be told to the people, and proper lessons should be relatable to the contemporary events, so that such revival doesn't occur?
Correct. No, completely agree. And when we talk of destruction of idols and temples, whether it is in Kashi or other places, it is not some medieval thing we are talking about. We saw that even now in broad daylight with television cameras around, the Bamiyan Buddhas were pulled down. The beautiful structures were pulled down in Afghanistan. And now with the Taliban there, you know what's happening, whether it is to women, whether it is to people of other faiths. Why go even up to Afghanistan? Our very vicinity, our neighborhood, Pakistan and Bangladesh, which was West and East Pakistan, the percentage of non-Muslims, minorities there, what was it at the time of creation of those countries, and today what it has plummeted to. And just yesterday you had the Economic Advisory Committee of the Prime Minister's office coming out with a report which talked about, in comparison, in India the minority community, particularly the Muslim community, has actually thrived, whereas the Hindu fertility rate and the growth of the population has come down. So all these, they may be rooted in a historical past, but they have so much contemporary relevance. The Bamiyan Buddhas met the same fate as Qutbuddin Aibak did to Kashi in the 11th century. So it's not some distant past. There's a fundamental theological difference which we must address at the core of all of this. We in India, in Bharat, in the Sanatan Dharma, we have Ekam Sat, Vipra Bahuda Vadanti. There is one truth and many paths to it, Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam and all those things. But we believe in multiple paths to the truth. But there are certain faiths, we must acknowledge that openly, which say my way or the highway. There is only one way to the truth. If you do not subscribe to my club rules, you are outside it, and we can then kill you. We can break your homes, your places of worship. You take away your women. We can convert you through allurements, inducements. This is a fact of life. And so how does a very esoteric faith then deal with these challenges of monotheistic, and hegemonistic religions, which go out more as a political arm to capture more lands, imperialistic tendencies that are there. So these are challenges of the past which have a lot of contemporary relevance even to societies today. We are seeing the Middle East in conflict. We are seeing different parts of the world go ablaze. You spoke about Syria and Iran. So these are very important issues which we must deal with. And correct understanding and representation of history is the only way out, in my view.
On this note, we have to wrap up because we have exceeded the initially discussed time duration. It was very lovely talking to Mr. Vikram Sampath, whose book is full of historical records pulled out from the court documents which the British government had submitted in the courts in the 1931 case. And thereafter, a lot of archaeological evidences have been brought about. A fair justice has been given to give a representation to both the sides of the dispute on the structure by Mr. Sampath. I think the students of history would greatly benefit by reading the book Waiting for Shiva, Unearthing the Secrets of Gyanvapi. Thank you so much, Mr. Vikram Sampath. It was lovely talking to us. Thank you so
Thank you very
much.
much. Thank you. Pleasure talking to you.